Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a habit and productivity app that makes healthy habits and deep work the path of least resistance. If you have a tendency to check emails or scroll through Instagram first thing in the morning, but long to develop a meditation and exercise habit first thing, Focus Bear can help you. The app blocks distractions on all your devices and guides you through your habits one at a time. Throughout the day, Focus Bear assists you to stay in deep work by blocking websites and apps that are unrelated to your chosen focus mode. Life's not all about work though. You'll be prompted to take regular breaks to rest your eyes and stretch your muscles. At the end of the day, Focus Bear helps you switch off. Work-related apps get hidden so you can unwind and sleep well. Check out the app by going to focusbear.io. Welcome to episode number 46 of the Focus and Chill podcast. We're thrilled to be joined by Eric Tivers today. Eric is a trained and licensed clinical social worker turned coach and is the founder and CEO of ADHD reWired. Since 2014, Eric has produced over 500 episodes of his podcast, ADHD reWired, which is just amazing. He's a leader in providing online group coaching and community-based growth programs for adults with ADHD. His coaching and accountability groups were recognized at the 2019 International Conference on ADHD as an innovative program of the year. Eric also runs a virtual co-working community for adults with ADHD called Adult Study Hall. You can learn more about ADHD reWired at adhdrewired.com. Welcome to the show, Eric.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's good to be here.
To start off with, can you tell us about your journey with ADHD?
Sure. Well, like most of your listeners, I've always had it. I didn't know that I had it until I got diagnosed my sophomore year of college. My freshman year, I was a advertising and marketing major. My first semester at the university, I got a 2.2 GPA, which is not very good. But it was fair considering that I was definitely opening more beers than books. So second semester comes and with the threat from my parents that said, if you don't get these grades up, you are coming home because we were not paying this, private school tuition for you to get those kind of grades. I was like, all right. And I had not the best relationship with my folks. And so like the threat of having to go home was a high motivator. So I studied a lot and I spent a lot of time in the library. And I was rewarded with that hard work with a 1.8.
Oh, brutal.
And it was during the summer in between or after my freshman year. And I had this chance meeting with a friend, and she was telling me that she was diagnosed with ADHD, and she was describing it to me. And it was one of those like huge light bulb moments of like, wait, that's ADHD? Because it was like this person was describing my internal experience because I was more inattentive, so I wasn't hyperactive. And when she was describing how it was for her for reading, this is like one of the big challenges that I would always have is I would start reading something and then my mind would start thinking about something that was triggered by something I was reading, but not necessarily related to what I was reading. And then that thought would then branch off into two other thoughts. And then those two thoughts would branch off into two other thoughts. So I'm having like 30 thoughts all at the same time, still while reading the words on the page, but not processing anything that I'm reading. Right. So I get to the end of whatever I had to read. Okay, I did my reading. I have no clue what I just read, but I did the reading. And so I was able to convince my folks to give me one more shot because I actually had a bunch of grant money and the terms of the grants that I had was, if I didn't get my grades up for this upcoming semester, that then I was going to lose the grant money. And so we made an arrangement with my parents, and I got sort of one more shot with this new information of this might be ADHD. I went the very first day I got back to campus, made an appointment with the school psychiatrist. He did the evaluation, and I remember him saying to me, he's like, "Wow, so no one ever identified you as having ADHD?" He's like, because he did a little bit of the explaining of it, but he's like, "You have like off the charts inattentive ADHD." Like, wait, what would you say? I wasn't paying attention. So I got a prescription for Adderall, and I literally look at my life as like pre the first time I took Adderall and post. Like, because I remember that very first time that I took Adderall, it's my sophomore year. I'm reading this book called Crested Kimono, which is I was also a sociology minor. I switched majors from advertising and marketing to social work with a sociology minor. And we're in this book, Crested Kimono. It's about the comparative business family in the Japanese culture. And the reason that it's relevant, that the fact that I remember what that book was, it was the first time I remember getting to the end of a chapter of a book, and like I knew what I had just read. And I remember, and this is 24 years ago now, I think. I still get kind of choked up when I talk about this story, because it was, this feeling that I think a lot of people with ADHD have of like, on one hand, like feeling they're intelligent, but on the other hand, really questioning if that's even accurate, because the grades are not reflecting that intelligence. Right. And I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like not only do I know what I just read, I actually enjoyed the process of reading, because like I didn't think it was even possible. I didn't know any different, that you can actually just have one thought at a time. You know that opening scene in The Simpsons where the clouds clear? Like that's kind of what it was like. It was like it was in a fog my entire life, but I never knew it because that was all I ever knew. And it was like, whoa, I can just focus on what I'm intending on doing. And so it was, it was a game changer for me.
Yeah, that sounds massive. And it's interesting because I guess there's the aspect of inattentive ADHD where you probably can hyperfocus on things. Is that part of why it wasn't picked up earlier? Was high school an enjoyable experience for you? And
No,
no,
it was I had that, what they call it, the FAFA syndrome, where it's like FAA. It's like you're doing well, or you're not doing well, and then it's like, okay, I have to scramble to get my grades up just enough so I can pass this class. But it wasn't like I never actually got A's until I started taking Adderall after my diagnosis. So after I started the medication, every semester was about a 3.75. Like I don't think I got anything below a 3.5 once I was on meds. Yeah, no, and I already forgot your question.
Yeah. No, you answered it in terms of why it wasn't picked up earlier, that it sounds like it was also almost a cycle of scrambling.
Yeah. But I also had, I because I wasn't hyperactive, like I was in my own imagination. Like I'm a self-taught musician, and I remember like all through school, like literally playing like symphonies like on my desk with like imagining it was the piano, right? Like, and that for me, music was one of my big areas of hyper focus for many, many, many years in my life. So much so that I have like issues with my hands and my back, because I would sit at the piano for so many hours, and sort of ignoring all of my other bodily cues that are telling me to take a break. There were times where I was literally falling asleep while playing piano. Like when I was in college, I would play sometimes for 10 to 12 hours at a time.
Wow.
And I was literally sitting at the piano, like falling asleep.
Epic. Did you consider doing music as your major instead?
So it's so funny we talk about like imposter syndrome. So I'm a self-taught. I don't know how to read music. When I was in my in middle school, I played the trumpet. And again, I was not really reading the music. I was, I as long as I could hear the song a couple times, I could play what I needed to play. And I would just sort of look at the sheet music and just say, all right, this is the part where it goes up, this is the part where it goes down. That's like, it's all I really needed to guide. And then for a high school audition, you had to show up and you were going to be given a piece of music you've never seen before.
Ooh, brutal.
So I did not show up for that. I was like, okay, I'm done. And it's a huge regret of mine. When I was struggling in college, like I had told my parents, I'm like, I just want to travel and play music because I was doing some gigging. As a part of the arrangement, the negotiation of, okay, my parents said, if you can get the grades up and you can keep this grant money, you can take they said take $2,000 and you can get yourself some new music gear. And like that to me, that was so motivating because I really wanted a couple new keyboards. And that that did help as a motivator. But I was like, there was definitely more than one time during that time where I'm like, I just kind of want to quit school and play music.
It's great that it wasn't a constant struggle as well, and that you were saying you began to enjoy the process, and that you were not only doing better at school, but it was more fun.
It was, and it's interesting too, because once I saw that, I could be successful, then I think it was that first semester after starting to take Adderall that my sort of perfectionism was also born. Because now that like, here's what I can achieve, now I have to keep achieving this. And so, I didn't have a lot of skills yet at that time. So a big part of what my, I had a good work ethic and I just worked really hard. I pulled way, way too many all-nighters. If you ever pull an all-weeker, because if you've ever been curious about hallucinogenics, you don't even need to take them. Like just pull it all weeker, and it's a pretty similar experience.
Yeah, even after 2 days of not sleeping, I'm starting to hear voices.
Oh my God, like the wall starts breathing. It's just, it is bad. And I did that a lot in college where it was just like, all right, here's another all-nighter.
Is that something that changed over time?
It did. It was when I was in grad school, I on average got about 2 hours of sleep a night.
Oh no.
And yeah, I mean, it was. I used to joke saying that I think grad students should be in the DSM, in the diagnostic statistical, because it was so unhealthy. And then I was talking to some other students, and so we all have our internships, and and some of these other students in my cohort where not only did they have the internships, they also had a full-time job and they were parents. And I was like, how do you do this? Like, I feel like I'm barely keeping up. I'm reading everything. And they're like, wait, you read everything? I was like, well, yeah. Like, don't you? They're like, no. I was like, wait a minute. And it was like the last 2 weeks of grad school that I learned from other, some of my peers in the program that nobody was really reading even close to everything. I guess it was just me. And it was like, on average, like 500 pages of kind of clinical text a week.
Wow.
Right. And because like I wanted to be, I was in a sense kind of trading my health and self-worth for that performance, for like the grades. Like if I get the grades, that means I'm worthy. And it really wasn't until a couple of years after that, when I got introduced to Brene Brown, did I realize sort of how unhealthy of a relationship I actually had with productivity and success. And it's interesting because I look back at grad school now, and if I could go back and do it again, I would very intentionally do worse. Because I finished with the 4.0, which at the time was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But I'm like, oh my God, like I was like killing myself in the process.
Probably was no longer enjoyable when you were working that hard.
Yeah, for sure.
Not much time for music then.
Well, and it's funny too that you say that. So right before I started grad school, I actually auditioned with this reggae band and got offered the gig to go on tour with them. And I was like, if I have some success with this and enjoy this, there's a good chance. Like I thought that it might be harder to get myself to go back to school. So I figured, all right, well, let me get this degree and then it's mine. And then I can make decisions about what I want to do with the rest of my life. But, I got the degree, and then I got the job, and then I got, the girl, and then I had the family. And then it's like fast forward 20 years almost. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, I have other passions that I also have that I kind of forgot about. And so over the last couple of years, I've been really trying to kind of come back to some of those things.
That's great to hear. I'd be keen to hear about your perspective in terms of, it's great to hear about your own story, but from all the guests that you've interviewed and your observations from the last 20 years or so about how you've seen perceptions change about ADHD. Because I mean, I only got diagnosed last year, and I saw ADHD as a bit like how you were describing in the beginning, that it was probably more perceived as the hyperactive side. So are you seeing more awareness now in society and a shifting in the awareness?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. One of the things that I think has changed, and this is actually kind of a recent shift, is the support people are having actually in the workplace with disclosure. Because for a long, long time, my standard sort of thoughts were like, don't disclose ADHD in the workplace. Share what you need to be successful. You don't need to actually talk about ADHD in order to share what you need to be successful, right? Like, if like for me, like a cubicle farm, it would be like the worst possible work environment I could put myself in. And I actually did once have a job in a cubicle farm, and it was awful. So, but then so I had this an interview with someone on the podcast tonight where I shared that, like, it's just not disclosing unless like the writing is on the wall that like you're about to get fired, or or a performance improvement plan based on something related to your ADHD. And there was a lot of people that responded. There was was tagged in a comment that was in another ADHD Facebook group. And what was really actually kind of surprising and in a wonderful way is how many people were kind of disagreeing with what I was saying and saying that they had disclosed in the workplace and had a positive experience with this disclosure. And so I do think that there is a shifting in sort of the thinking around neurodivergence in the workplace. I don't think it's where it needs to be still, but I think that over the last couple of years, I do think that there has been a really big positive shift of understanding sort of just different, the way different brains are wired. Yeah, so I think that's one of the big things that actually change. And then like sort of a smaller thing, but when I was in school, as a social worker, one of the things that was really sort of drilled into us is the use of person first language. A person with ADHD, not an ADHD person. And for the first 10, 15 years of doing this, I'm like, yep, like person first language, even though like it's sometimes awkward to say it because it's more words and all this stuff. My thinking has shifted around that. I've had people, I've had my siblings who have actually said to me, like, not everything is ADHD, Eric. I'm like, but here's the thing. When you have ADHD, you can't really separate ADHD from the rest of your life. Like it really does actually weave through everything. So I am definitely, I've let go of this, like, you have to use person first language. Like, how about we use the language that other people want to use for themselves? And then we can use what we want for ourselves.
So now more like adopting ADHD is, or I have ADHD. Is that the difference you mean?
Yeah. So like I will sort of flip between like, ADHDers and having ADHD. But I'm not as rigid about the you have to use person first language, and I'll see people in different Facebook groups and online that used to sort of like jump on people for that. But then I think really from the autism community, they are the ones that really push back against this. They're like, stop saying I'm a person with autism. I'm an autistic person. Right. And it's like, okay, like let's listen to the people who this is actually impacting.
I guess that would imply that it's something that needs to be treated, whereas maybe the thing that you mentioned before as well, in terms of greater acceptance, maybe there's greater awareness of the strengths. And I personally don't want to get rid of my divergent thinking and my creativity. So maybe that's a way to consider it, that it has its pros and its cons.
Yeah, it's like I'm not a big proponent of the whole like ADHD as a superpower thinking, and I know that there are people that really works for them. I think for me, like, do I think ADHD comes with some inherent strengths? Yeah, I think probably does, even though there's not a lot of research that actually supports that idea. I do think just from, my own life experience and the, over thousands of people that I've worked with ADHD, like, I think generally speaking, we tend to be more creative, which comes with the divergent thinking. But again, not always. We tend to be more outside the box thinkers. We tend to take more risks, which can be a strength or not. But I think the for me, I think it's important to look at the whole package. Like, all right, what are our strengths, and can we use our strengths to help us navigate around some of our challenges, right? Like, I think it's really important that we also are really try to do everything we can to increase our self-awareness around what our challenges are, but let's not spend all of our time just trying to improve our challenges. Like, let's really strengthen our strengths, right? What are we really good at? Let's get amazing at it. Let's build mastery around it, right? Because I think that when you have ADHD, like when you have when you're interested in something, right? Like, our brain, it's like a kid in a candy shop, right? Like, it's getting all the dopamine it needs because it is interested.
Yeah, absolutely. You started talking then about the people that you work with, which is a good way to move into the type of work that you do, because you have, like many ADHDers, you have multiple different projects that you're working on.
Always, yeah. So my big thing is, I run these intensive coaching and accountability groups. So it's a 10-week group, meets 3 times a week. So it's groups of about 12 people. It meets 3 times a week, and then within our 12-person group, we create 3 accountability teams of 4 members, and they will meet in addition twice a week. So it is a really intense program, and then they have daily accountability around their top 3 things. And it really goes through a lot of the different components of, ADHD management, but it is not just about the productivity, even though a lot of the stuff we do does center around, time awareness and learning how to really understand. All right, so I think this thing takes an hour. I've tracked it now 3 times. Takes about 3 hours. Well, let me look at some other things. And I find that this is my ratio, is that when my gut tells me 1 time, I know that I have to like times that by 3. And that's, for me. And we look at routines, and we look at, daily, weekly, yearly planning. But that's sort of the structured context. But what we really are doing is looking at acceptance and sort of building that self-awareness. And what's so neat to me is, to me, I think group coaching is kind of like this magical onion peeler, right? It's like people come in with a couple ideas maybe of what they want to work on, and then it's like once we start getting into the work, it's like the onion just continues to peel. It's like, oh yeah, or people will say like, oh, yeah, I accept my ADHD, and then they come in and they're like, oh yeah, I have more work to do around that, right? And that piece is so important. And so many of our alumni will say, we heard the importance and the value and the impact of community, but before going through it, they would say that they had no real idea of how important community actually is in the realm of managing ADHD. That idea of like not just intellectually knowing you're not alone, but emotionally, socially, connecting with others. When you see yourself in someone else, when you see yourself reflected back, and when you see somebody else who maybe is beating themselves up and being really hard on themselves, and you also see that they're doing all these other great things that they are not giving themselves credit for, like, hey, like, you're being really hard on yourself, and look at all these other things. And then you start to realize, oh, wait a minute, I think I'm doing that too. Right. And so that self-compassion piece, it's like, I think that self-compassion really can be one of the hardest but most important things that we really work on when we have ADHD. Because if anything, we are going to screw stuff up more than neurotypical people. We just will. Right.
Yeah.
So, like, instead of beating ourselves up, which I, jokingly will say that, if I thought beating ourselves up was an effective way to do better, I would come up with some, creative exercises on what's the best, most efficient way to beat ourselves up. Right. And when I put it that way, people realize that's kind of an absurd construct. Right. So it's like, like even when we are screwing up, that is actually when self-compassion is so important. That is when we have to say, okay, like that didn't go the way I wanted it to, or whoops, like I was doing this routine thing really well, and I don't know what happened, but I think the last time I did it was 3 weeks ago. You know, like recognizing that and going, okay, where am I at right now? And what can I do to take that first step to get back on track? Because so many people when they are thinking about wanting to manage their ADHD better, they're like, I just want to be more consistent. I just want to be more consistent. Like, let go of consistency. Focus on resilience. Resilience is the act of getting back up, right? That is something we can do something about. With the only consistent thing around ADHD is that it's inconsistent. I think letting go of this idea of let's try to be more consistent, because the idea of like lagging indicators, like in business, right? Like consistency is a lagging indicator, right? If we look at consistency as an average of like, let's look at the number of days we are sort of on our game versus the days that we're not on our game. If we just focus on getting back up, that's where the consistency as a result will be improved, but not to focus on consistency itself, because that's a hard thing to control. And all you're left with is beating yourself up, which I've yet to see ever help.
That's really interesting, because that's always been my goal in life, to be more consistent. And it felt very ephemeral and hard to do, especially if it's things about my mental state. That if one of my goals was, I just want to be able to pay more attention during work and pay more attention to my wife. But like you said, it's a lagging indicator that I can't magically make that happen.
And one example too is with around like planning, right? So in our coaching groups, we help people with doing long-term planning. And and it's great when you're in your flow of doing your daily and weekly planning, because it's being informed by your long-term planning. But like any good ADHD, like it's gonna slip away from us sometimes, right? And this happens to me too. And the analogy I sort of like is, think about a marathon runner. Now, let's say someone has run multiple marathons. Maybe they had an injury and they've been on the couch for the last couple of years and have not done anything really active. And now that they're starting to maybe heal and maybe ready to start working out again, they don't get up off the couch and go, okay, I'm going to get off the couch right now and go run a marathon. Right? It's like they start with the basics. They start with maybe a brisk power walk or a short jog. Right? And I think our ADHD strategies need to be just like that. Like, great, we had this nice stretch where we were really killing it, right? And then ADHD showed up and was winning for a while. Okay, we recognize it. What could we do to get back to what we were doing? We're not going to pick it back up right where we left off. We're going to have to take a couple steps back so we can meet ourselves right where we're at, in order to then once again be at or further along where we slipped.
You're describing my meditation habit perfectly. I had it
Meditation,
half an hour every
same.
day, and now it slipped back to 5 minutes, and I've gradually been increasing it by 1 minute per week, and that's been helpful. Speaking of marathons, are you a runner in addition to your interest in music?
I am not a runner. I used to do a lot of cycling, and then, well, more mountain biking. And because I'm a little bit of an adrenaline junkie and my bones aren't the best, like I actually have, when I was 19, I was diagnosed with osteopenia, which is like premature osteoporosis. So I used to do stupid stuff on a mountain bike regularly. I've broken multiple ribs, like more than once, like doing that just like seemed like a good idea at the time. I wasn't hyperactive. I was impulsive and still have some impulsivity. But I've flown into a tree before. Like, if you make really direct contact with a tree when you're on your bike and your chest hits it just right, you'll actually get the pattern of the bruise will be the bark of the tree.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't recommend it. So I used to do a lot of that. But I stepped away from that because I couldn't behave myself on my bike. If I saw something that looked like I could jump, I tried doing it. And then my back would be, really upset with me. So I do play a lot of pickleball. That's my favorite form of exercise now. I don't know if that's if you've ever played or heard of pickleball.
Oh yeah, I haven't played it myself, but I've got a friend who loves it. So it's sort of a mixture between table tennis and tennis.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, it's super fun and it's very ADHD friendly because there's a whole kind of culture of pickleball where it's open play in a lot of places where you just show up. So you don't have to plan to meet with other people. You just show up and other people are also showing up. So in that realm, it's very ADHD friendly. Yeah, so that's but exercise is a really important part of my ADHD management.
And how about music?
So I have been trying to play music more. I've been trying to get back into it more. It's funny when I go through these cycles where I'm like, I kind of rededicate myself to getting back into playing music, and then I'm then reminded again why I sort of allowed myself to take a bit of a step away. Was I was like when I used to play for hours and hours and hours at a time, like my hands would hurt so bad. I was like dropping coffee cups, like.
Ooh.
And so I was like, oh yeah, like when the hand cramp comes, it's like, oh yeah, like hand stuff is not the kind of pain you want to push through. Like I wish someone told me this when I was younger. But yeah, it's I do try to play more. It is more of just a creative outlet for me right now. I would love to form a band again at some point. So yeah, because I do love music. That is it to me. That is especially if I get to play with some other good musicians who are good at improvising and can do some vocal harmony. Like to me, that's like the magic land where my brain is most happiest.
Yeah, that always looks amazing. You mentioned routines before when you were talking about the structured accountability groups. What does your morning routine look like?
My morning routine, well, it depends on, so I share 50-50 custody with my ex, so it kind of depends on whether I have my son or not. But I'm typically waking up, somewhere between 6:30 and 7. Like typically even on the weekends, because one of the things that I've learned is that like I will pay the price Monday and Tuesday and sometimes Wednesday if I allow myself to stay up really late on the weekends. So if I'm staying up late on the weekends, I'm really trying to make sure it's really worth it. Like I'm going to go see live music or something. Like so I know the cost. So I get up, I literally make the same breakfast like 99% of the time. I use a high protein oatmeal with strawberries, bananas, blackberries, and blueberries. I add some nuts to it, and I do that like 99% of the time because I don't have to then make a decision about what I want to have for breakfast. I also do the same thing for lunch. I make the same salad almost every day. It was one of the things where I had someone say, you think maybe you're possibly on the autism spectrum? And I was like, maybe. I don't know.
I was thinking that I wasn't going to ask it.
Right. And it's like, and because I have this year, I've actually been questioning that myself, and I actually still don't have an answer to it. But one of the things that I realized I started doing that was because I understand that when we have things that are routine that we're going to be doing every day, if we can take the decision-making process out of it, we are now saving executive function. So this always became a strategy to preserve executive function. So I can, get to this point where I'm kind of doing stuff a little bit on autopilot because this is what I do every day. So I don't have to make these decisions about, is today an egg day or is today an oatmeal day? Like if I wake up and I'm really jonesing for some eggs, I'll have eggs. But but it's 99% of the time it's oatmeal.
Yeah, I'm the same. My parents always thought I was weird for that, but I guess that's the reason that I was saving executive function for the things I care about.
Yeah, and so like I try to work out most mornings. It's always tricky for me when the weather starts changing because I have a really good like routine where I'm playing like outdoor pickleball, and then when they were in between like when the indoor season hasn't quite started yet, but it's not really nice enough to play outside. And us pickleballers tend to be kind of like a little loopy. Like we'll play when it's really cold out. Like it doesn't make sense. I think I started especially because of COVID when like we couldn't do anything, but we could do outdoor pickleball. And I was playing when it was like 35 degrees out. Like we were still playing pickleball,
which is like freezing temperature for the Australian audience.
Yes. So yeah, it includes that. It's after I do that, I shower. I try to have my lunch made the night before. And I've also set my life up so my early morning meeting, like the earliest I have a meeting is 11 a.m.
Well, I love that. I should do that.
Because I learned that like that I exercise for my brain. I need exercise for my brain. It is like if when exercise starts to slip, like there is a very clear correlation between my anxiety and depression and my ADHD symptoms getting worse when I'm not exercising.
Yeah, same here. Do you think, is it the aerobic side of it with pickleball, because you're probably running around a fair bit, or is it
So
being
I
outdoors?
yes and yes, and pickleball to me, it's literally it's a game of get the ball, 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 get the ball. Right, so it's just like it's my brain just loves it. It is like it is my happy place. It is, I say it's cheaper than therapy. And it's social and it's fun. And at least where I play, it also just, I don't know, it attracts just a little bit more of a quirky group of people. And you get to play with people of all ages, which is also kind of fun. But yeah, fun matters. Like fun definitely matters.
I'm gonna check it out, because I used to play tennis when I was a kid, and for me it was quite anxiety provoking, because it felt very high intensity, that if I screwed it up I'd let my doubles partner down. But I've heard maybe it's a little bit more compassionate, the game of pickleball.
It's a game called pickleball. I always think it's funny when people take it so seriously where they're getting upset on the court. I'm like, it's called pickleball. Just relax. It's funny because like I'm like this yin yang of a competitive person. Like I play very competitively, but I actually don't care whether or not I win or not. Like I'm just there to have fun.
That's great. I'll have to try it again, because I've literally smashed tennis rackets, and it's not like I was good at it. I was just a mediocre player, but there was so much self-judgment when I'd screw it up that I've broken at least 2 rackets. So maybe I
And
should try pickleball now.
and the thing that I actually like about pickleball too, and I think why it's become such a fast growing sport, at least here in the US, is that it's an easy game to start, right? It takes a lot of practice to get really, really good at it, like anything. But like I always found tennis to be awkward. Like the serve, I could never figure out that tennis serve. I hated the overhand tennis serve. Pickleball, you serve underhand.
Ooh, I like that. I can see how that feeds into for the rest of the day as well. When you're talking about exercising for the brain, I do find that as well, that it not only helps my mood, but also my productivity for the rest of the day. What other tactics do you have for optimizing your productivity?
Um, Saying no to a lot of things. Um, and that's it's I'm not always successful with it, but it's actually one of the over the last 10 years since I started ADHD rewired, has been one of the most important things that I've really have learned that has really shaped that the less I do, the more productive I am. And not that I am doing less, I'm just doing a less in a sense variety of things, because then it allows me to really systemize more of what I'm doing. Um, which has sometimes has had a paradoxical effect in the sense that because of what I do, it is really routine. I have my launch cycles for my coaching groups, and then we have the groups, then it's kind of rinse and repeat. And, because I've been doing it for so long, it's like I'm not as dependent on using like my task list or project management tool, because I know what I need to be doing. But the downside of that is when I have a couple like one-off things, I will sometimes forget to look at my task list because I think I know what I need to be doing.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and it's identifying when my peak hours for work are, and it's also I've been spending a lot of time over the last couple of years really like just learning how to be a better leader. So because I'm not the only one that coaches in my program, and that's I feel like the gap between where I want to be as a leader and where I am has gotten smaller, but it's been a challenge, and something that's been kind of a fun challenge. But I want my goal is to have the biggest impact I can on people with ADHD, so they don't feel alone, and to know that you actually can thrive with ADHD. Like it doesn't need to, life doesn't always need to be so hard. We don't need ADHD alone. And I think that's one of like the most important things I've learned, and why I'm such a proponent of community-based and coaching and group-based programs, because yeah, don't ADHD alone.
Hmm. I certainly can attest to that as well. It makes me feel a lot better when I hear other people When you mentioned identifying peak hours for productivity, that made me think that maybe you take breaks as part of your day. So we're going to take a quick break now.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
All right, we're back, and there may be a correction here. I made an assumption that you take a lot of breaks, but based on your piano playing, maybe you don't take breaks?
During one of my probably most challenging ADHD symptoms is transitioning, which means I am not great at taking breaks. Like one of the things that I should do in our adult study hall community. So once a month, I will run. It's called a Pomodoro dance party. So we do 2 50-minute work blocks, and then after each 50-minute work block, we'll do a 10-minute actual like dance party. And the reason I do that is because like I learned too that physical movement is such an important part of taking an effective break. And then that accountability of like, oh wait, I'm leading this and we're doing this together. Every time I take a good break, I'm like, oh, I should do this more often. But it's definitely something that I would benefit from doing more.
Cool. Well, maybe that's a habit you'd like to remove from your life in terms of not working nonstop.
I have gotten so much better at that. There was a story that I told, and it's funny because it's true that there was a while I was looking into, and I found it in my area, a 12-step meeting for Workaholics Anonymous. And I was going to go, and I had it on my calendar, but I ended up not going because I ended up working late. And that was a couple of years ago. I've gotten way, way, way better with my work-life balance. It is, which has been, actually part of what it's helped is actually getting divorced has actually helped me, because it's like if I had that urgency of, oh, I have to go pick up my son now, and now it's like forced. I say family has forced on me, but like, yeah, I'm responsible for being dad, and it's actually worked really well for me.
Okay, that's encouraging, because I'm considering my wife and I are working towards having a child, and I've had concerns about will I actually step up and be part of it. Have you found that just having the child has made you naturally want to be there?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a complicated story with divorce in there as well, but I will say now I love being dad, and it's I feel like there wasn't as much of a partnership as I wish there were when I was married. But yeah, I really do enjoy being dad, even though my son drives me nuts sometimes. But I don't know any parents who wouldn't say that about their kid. That they're, my kid is also neurodivergent. I actually had him on my podcast a while back.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and he's 12 years old. He was on when I think he was like 9 or 10. So yeah, that's but yeah, it's helped. It has helped me be more present and help me leave work at work. Because that thing of like when you're home, you're thinking about work, and when you're at work, you're thinking about home. Like I've gotten a lot better at like when I'm at work, I'm thinking about work, and when I'm home, I'm thinking about home, mostly.
Well, I still aspire to that. My brain finds it hard to shut off. So what are your secrets to switching off at night?
And one thing that a couple of years ago, I became very intentional about is about not starting any sort of creative project like after 5 or 6 p.m. because like my brain just won't stop then. Right. And it's like I'll ignore all the cues of hunger, of needing to go to the bathroom, like all these things. I'm like, until I'm like cranky and irritable and like starving, and then I will eat anything that's put in front of me. Right. Because stopping is hard. Right. And so in the evening, I'm doing something I like doing, and I need to stop, and my brakes aren't working because my meds have worn off and my executive function tank is depleted. Like it's going to be problematic for me. And so part of managing ADHD means know your tendencies and work around those. Don't keep stepping in the minefield if you know that the next step is a minefield.
That makes sense. And instead, you mentioned that you make your lunch the night before. What other things do you do as part of your evening routine?
Yeah, I actually make my lunch before I start making dinner, and I do that as a way because I don't like making my lunch. I find it like kind of a pain, and so what I do I don't love batching either, so I sort of mini batch. I'll make 2 days of my lunch in one day, but I do it before I am making dinner because I'm hungry. So I'm like motivated to hurry up, get done with my lunch so I can make dinner. Because after I've already, made dinner, like I just want to sit on the couch and kind of relax, or I'll get my son
Mm,
get ready to bed. And by the time that's done, like I have nothing left. So the things I try to do, like when I'm doing the things that I know are helpful for me, it's either listening or playing music. Sometimes I'll watch TV, um, you know, talk with friends or my partner, um, uh, go for motorcycle rides. That's actually been that's a new last year I got my motorcycle license. I figured, all right, I got divorced. I turned 40. The next logical thing seemed to be to get a motorcycle. So, weather permitting, that's one of my very, very favorite things to do is my motorcycle, especially at
but
night.
it's not a dirt bike, right? You're not out on the trails running into trees.
No, it is not a dirt bike. I have thought about that because it looks really fun. But it's a big cruiser, a big engine, and it's super fun. And I always wear a helmet. So I believe in
Good.
taking risks carefully.
Love it. What resources would you recommend for people? Your own the accountability groups that you run and your podcast are obviously on that list. What else do you find helpful?
Community. I think anything where you can find community, whether it's our co-working community, adult study hall, or our coaching groups. We even have a free Facebook community. Um, and there are lots of great ADHD communities out there. Some are paid membership communities, some are free communities. Like I say, find your communities. I think that's one of the most important things. And search different content. Now it's funny when I first started podcasting, like there was like me and I think 4 other ADHD podcasts out there. Now it's like me and everyone else and their mother who has ADHD or has an ADHD podcast. But there are good podcasts out there, and I think that there are people's different things resonate with different people. Obviously, like YouTube, there's a sort of this joke too about like TikTok. TikTok seems to be the place where everyone's getting diagnosed with ADHD now, which is on one hand, it's like, okay, like if people are like genuinely have ADHD and they're learning about it through that, like great. But there's also a lot of things that people are saying, this is an ADHD symptom. It's like, actually, that's not an ADHD symptom, and you're not a mental health professional, and you're passing things off like you're entertaining, which is great. But like, please, like, one of the things that like Jessica McKay with How to ADHD that I so admire about her work is, she's not a mental health professional, and she has a team of like research consultants like on her that work with her so she makes sure and does so much due diligence that what she is putting out there is science-based, right? Because there's a lot of information that like might seem like it makes sense, but I think looking at what science says is important. So How to ADHD on YouTube, obviously the my podcast ADHD rewired, audiobooks. Like I read with my ears. There's lots of ADHD books out there, and just finding your thing. But I will say this: there are lots of people who collect information about ADHD, but then don't do anything with it. Instead of reading 12 books on ADHD, why don't you read one book 12 times and really develop the skills and strategies that are contained within that book?
Sage advice. If people want to connect with you or follow your work, is ADHDrewired.com the best place?
That is the best place. You can find everything there. There's a contact form on there. You can learn about our coaching groups, our co-working program, Adult Study Hall. You can get this podcast on the same podcast app you're listening to this on right now. So ADHD Rewired, ADHDrewired.com.
Fantastic. Do you have any final words or asks for the audience?
Any words or asks for the audience? Be kind to yourself. You are doing the best that you can, and your best will be different day to day. And just be patient with yourself. I think that's, I think as any good ADHDer will say, we want growth yesterday, right? Like growth is going to take more time than you want it to. I circle with this as well. Like, I like, even with my therapist, I'm like, can we skip this step so we can just get to the next thing already? Like, it's like, yeah, no. I'm like, So I get it. Like, part of ADHD is being patient. Try to be patient with yourself. Love yourself. Find your community, because you're going to find people that love you for who you are, not just like because of who you are. And yeah. So just be kind and gentle to yourself.
Thanks. Really words that I need to take on myself. Thanks a lot for coming on the show, Eric.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.